Live from Bloomberg's world headquarters in New York, I'm Katie Greifeld, stepping in for Scarlett Fu.
And I'm Tim Stedevec. Welcome to Bloomberg Crypto. We'll look at the people, transactions, and technology shaping the world of decentralized finance.
Coming up, Bitcoin climbs back above $90,000, having its best day since May. It recovers from a bruising sell-off that erased nearly $1 billion in leverage bets.
In just a moment, we're going to talk to the CEO of Strategy. The company saying it has created a $1.4 billion reserve to fund future dividend and interest payments in a bid to temper investor fears.
And we dig into Bitmain, a Chinese manufacturer that sells most of the world's Bitcoin mining machines and is raising national security concerns.
That's all ahead over the next half hour. First, though, a check of what Bitcoin's been doing, not just over the past few months, but over the past year. Look at this. Bitcoin still down from that October high. That was in the early part of October. Also, just a brutal November as well. Down about 27% since that October high, just above $125,000. And then November, in the month alone of November, Bitcoin, Katie, fell another 17%, seeing a little bit of recovery after yesterday's sell-off. But that's why I've seen some of these companies that are so closely tied to this crypto asset taking a hit of late as well.
Well, Strategy also making waves after the CEO said that the firm will consider selling some of its Bitcoin holdings if its premium to Bitcoin falls below 1. Now, that's in order to pay a quarterly dividend. The company then disclosed a $1.4 billion US dollar reserve to soothe fears. Joining us now, I'm pleased to say, is Phong Le. He is president and CEO of Strategy. Phong, it's great to have you with us. Let's rewind a little bit to the summer of 2020. It was the depths of the pandemic. Michael Saylor came out and started buying Bitcoin basically because he was worried about the debasement of the dollar. He also said at the time that the company's board viewed the company's cash reserves as a, quote, melting ice cube. Fast forward 5 years, now Strategy has set up a dollar reserve. So my first question is, why buy ice cubes?
Well, you know, we have long-term strategy, which is to buy and hold Bitcoin. It's our primary treasury reserve asset. And we have short-term dollar obligations that are created because of the dividends we have on our preferred notes. And we want to maintain and create more Bitcoin yield, Bitcoin per share. And we really don't want to have to utilize that Bitcoin at times when our equity value goes below 1x MNAV. So we said, well, if we want to really create a bulletproof balance sheet, let's have the global reserve digital asset, which is Bitcoin for the long term, and the global reserve digital currency for the short term. And so that's why I created a US dollar reserve to pay down our dividends in the short term in the case that we need it. And we thought that just makes our balance sheet even stronger than it has been in the past.
Well, we certainly understand needing to pay back the debt. That certainly makes sense. But on the dividend, why are you so committed to paying this dividend? Would you ever consider suspending it? Companies do suspend dividends from time to time.
Yeah, companies do suspend the dividend, but it creates fear, uncertainty, doubt in our preferred shareholders, which will impact our convertible shareholders, which will impact our equity shareholders. So I think preserving the payment of the dividend, even if our board has the rights to suspend it, it's the right thing for the short term, for the next 1, 2, 3 years. And it's important. It's also important for the Bitcoin asset class. And we realize we play a role bigger than just strategy in the Bitcoin world.
So would you say investors should think you will never suspend that dividend?
Never say never, Jim. But yeah, our objective is to pay the dividend into perpetuity.
I hear what you're saying, and you describe that cascade, the daisy chain here when it comes to all the different equity and debt holders. I am curious. You said last week that selling Bitcoin would be a, quote, last resort. How should we think about how you would prioritize dividend payments versus tapping that last resort of potentially selling some of your Bitcoin holdings?
Yeah, what we did in the last couple of weeks was to address, I think, some of the misconceptions around strategy. And I do think some of the price action in Bitcoin could have been related to the concerns around our company. Here's misconception number one. We're highly levered. We're 12% leverage. If you add in our preferreds, is 27% leverage. A typical company that's public in the US has 60 to 80% leverage. A highly levered company is 2 to 3x, 200 to 300x leverage. We're not even close to those levels. That was misconception number one. Misconception number two is that we're not able to pay down our dividends using our balance sheet. And I get the concern around our ability to issue equity. Look, in 8.5 days, we issued $1.44 billion of equity. In 8.5 days, we issued enough equity to cover 21 months. And then on the back end of that, we have 74 years of dividends in our Bitcoin. So we've addressed sort of this sort of concern around us selling Bitcoin. Now, if we are able to grow our cash dividends, cash reserve, to call it 2 or 3 years of dividends, we're really talking about the end of 2028, right. January 2029, where we might have to consider, do we have to sell Bitcoin? We would if we had to pay our dividends, but realistically, I don't think we're going to be in that situation now that we've built up the cash reserve.
Well, Phong, you talk about growing the cash reserves that you've built out. Is this something that you plan to maintain forever in perpetuity, or is this just something to get you through this period where the broader market is under pressure?
I think we'll try to maintain a 2 to 3 year cash reserve equal to 2 to 3 years of our dividends, which will grow as we issue more preferreds. And it is something that I think we'll do for the next 5-10 years, and we'll reassess it.
The MNAV, how do you get that back up? How do you get that higher?
We had the same thing happen. Some folks have been in our securities for the last year. Some have been in it the last 5 years. Some have been in it for 30 years. Those who've been in it for 5 years have seen this happen before, right? And during crypto winter in 2022, our MNAV compressed to similar levels. And everyone thought that was the end of strategy. Everybody thought it was the end of Bitcoin. And you've seen it expand to 2 to 3x. I think there's a big misconception about what we are as a company. Right. People think that we're a closed-ended fund, we're an ETF, and therefore we should trade at 1x MNAV. The MSCI thinks we're a closed-ended fund and we're an ETF, therefore we shouldn't be potentially shouldn't be, part of their indices. We're not. We're an operating company. Right. We're an operating company, a fully integrated, vertically integrated Bitcoin operating company. The only thing we don't do is we don't mine Bitcoin, but we buy Bitcoin, we issue securities, we create products, and we create operating income, and we have employees, we have staff, we have finance people, we have attorneys, we have engineers. Like, we're a fully operational Bitcoin treasury company. And right. So in that case, we should trade at some premium equal to the ability for us to grow our treasury and our operating income over time.
Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to ask, you mentioned there's this misconception about what strategy is, what the company actually is. And it's interesting to hear you say that, because you think about what MSCI is asking right now. In mid-October, it said basically that digital asset treasury companies maybe more closely resemble investment funds rather than traditional companies. Investment funds, of course, aren't allowed in their indices, and they proposed actually excluding DATs from their indices. So to that point, have you engaged with MSCI on that, what strategy actually is?
We're beginning the education process, and a lot of our supporters and others in the industry have too. And I don't think this is really a topic for significant debate, either from an optics or legal perspective. We're an operating company, right? If you want a fund, go buy IBIT, which is a great option. Go buy underlying Bitcoin. That's not what we purport to be, not what we look like, how we operate at all. And so I think there's an education process. I also don't think it's a great idea to pick and choose winners and losers, right? There are many other operating companies that capitalize on assets like oil or gold or airplanes or hotels. And to tell an industry that your asset doesn't count, right? That if you have more than 50% of your assets in any particular asset, Bitcoin, versus more than 50% of your assets in hotels, it just seems like someone's picking winners and losers out there, and that's not really what indices should be doing.
Phong, to switch gears just a little bit in terms of other types of businesses that strategy could be involved with, lending of Bitcoin. It reached a record high in the third quarter. Why hasn't strategy gotten involved?
Yeah, we run a very simple business, right? I've been doing this for 10 years now, 5 years with Bitcoin. We buy and we hold Bitcoin. I do think over the course of the next year, and I'm quite excited about it, traditional finance entering the Bitcoin world, companies have made announcements, Citibank, Morgan Stanley, and others, big real banks are going to offer custody service, lending service, and staking and otherwise. I think when they enter that space and we have different counterparties, it's something we would consider and I think would be enthusiastic about.
Well, to that point, Phong, I mean, have you held any preliminary talks with lending platforms or other potential partners to handle those logistics?
We've had a lot of constructive discussions. They've primarily been of the, hey, we're thinking about offering Bitcoin services, custody, exchange, lending, et cetera. You're the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin in the world. What's your advice to us? And can we work together? And to the extent they're large, U.S.-based banks that have a lot of history and a strong balance sheet, we're very excited to partner with them.
All right, Phong, we got to go. Thanks so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but we got to get you back here soon. Phong Le, President and CEO of Strategy. Well, happening right now, President Trump holding a cabinet meeting. He renewed criticism of Fed Chair Jerome Powell's reluctance to lower interest rates, saying even Jamie Dimon wants lower rates. President Trump says he will announce Powell's successor in early 2026. He also teased a healthcare announcement. We'll keep you posted on any other developments coming from the White House. We'll be back in just a minute. More crypto after the break. This is Bloomberg.
I aced. I got every question right. And these are tough questions. These are questions that I would say 99% of the people that I'm talking to right now, meaning the people from the fake news, would not do well in those exams. But I'm the only one that took it. I got every single question right. And then I read in the New York.
Welcome back to Bloomberg Crypto. Let's welcome in Kavita Gupta. She is general partner and founder of Delta Blockchain Fund. Kavita, great to see you in person.
Thank you.
So we were having an interesting conversation in the commercial break about DATs. Obviously, we just spoke to the CEO of Strategy. How are you viewing DATs at this moment in time, especially as the broader market comes under some pressure?
We are invested in over 8 to 10 of them and super frustrated with the investments with DATs because it's the most opaque investments as I see we have done. It's like you buy a public market stocks and then they are responsible for at least having public information, filings, etc. But what I'm seeing with that are the main sponsors, 2 or 3 groups, mostly the funds, the crypto funds, are the majority stakeholders. And there is no transparency. We just get to know through lawyers, not even the sponsors group, oh, we have changed this rule now we're not going to release the stocks, we are not going to make it public, we're going to extend and actually increase the price, etc., etc.
But ostensibly, that lack of transparency was known before you made the investment.
No, never the case. Because when you make an investment, you are basically talking to the sponsors group and you are expecting that there is going to be monthly or quarterly meetings with the main executives, at least the executives. What happened over time, like any other big crypto BAF, is that people started saying, hey, we are the sponsored group. We don't even know who's going to be the CEO. We don't even know what it is, but we are doing a $2 billion Solana DAT, or we are doing a $1 billion Ethereum DAT. Just take our name, and those people have 5 jobs, and now it's impossible to reach them, and the new CEO has no idea what is happening at the sponsors level.
Interesting. So transparency with literal humans here who are running the company. I hear what you're saying. With those 9 investments that you do have, would you sell them off, or is this just a scenario where maybe you would be very hesitant to invest in another DAT?
I think very hesitant to do another DAT. Transparency, governance, and also when you tell something, when you share an information and say, oh, within a month or 2 months, you're going to have your publicly traded stocks in your hand, and then you change all those rules without even informing. Literally, for 2 of the DATs, we got the information that the extension timeline has been extended by publicly Twitter accounts. So, and when we actually emailed the lawyers, they're like, oh, we have no idea. The committee just did it.
Well, why did you invest in these DATs in the first place?
Because at that point of time, the math made sense as an investment opportunity to basically have that liquidity provisioning within a month or 2 months of investing with 2x to 3x liquidity option. is an amazing investment vehicle to do. And we have seen that earlier, whether it's MicroStrategy, opacity, which has given us a 4x liquidity within 6 months of our investments, or SharpLink has done very well in the early time periods.
Right.
But now what we are seeing is that a lot of DATs have come into the market taking the similar principle with respect to math, but not really running their governance and management accordingly. And that has created a series of troubles. But I'm also seeing that that is why the liquidity has also gone dry in new investments and digital asset treasuries.
Well, that's interesting, Kavita. My next question to you was going to be, I mean, are there any examples of specific DATs that are doing a really good job when it comes to that governance and that transparency?
I think I'm biased here, but opacity, which was one of my first investment, it's not a huge DAT of $1 billion. It's a Solana DAT by GSR. They are the only one which in this liquidity crunch of crypto market is still positive. Like most of the $1 billion DATs, most of the most famous DATs in the market are all in negative, whether it's Hyperliquid, it's Solana, it's Ethereum, it's Bitcoin. Somehow, based on the lending rates, based on the staking rates, keeping the governance cost very low, opacity has been able to really maintain themselves positive. Even though we have seen yesterday where the market really had one of the all-time lows in a long time, I was surprised that that was the only DAT on our book which was still positive on our month-end numbers.
So before we let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to make a call on Bitcoin's price in the first half of 2026. I mean, here we are barely above 90,000, still down significantly from 126,000 reached in the early part of October. What's 2026 look like?
I feel like this whole concept of reflexivity by George Soros is what we are living in crypto market right now. And people did try to have a quick liquid push in yesterday, but we did see all the losses from morning, especially from MicroStrategy, has been pulled up. By the end of the day, ETH went almost touching 3K. It hasn't crossed 3K, but almost there. I feel like given the holiday season, January, March, December to January, Feb, has always been a really big season for crypto. I would say we will cross back 100. I'm not saying we'll do 150K, but I think that we will go back to 120 to 130 area in Bitcoin. But the places which I would be most excited going back would be the percentage movement up in ETH and Solana again. Because I do expect that if we're going to have a new Fed chair and we're going to have the December announcement on the Fed rate cut, crypto is going to be a big play out there.
Kavita Gupta, general partner and founder of Delta Blockchain Fund. Always good to see you, Kavita.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Hey, coming up, shares of American Bitcoin getting hammered in today's trading session. The crypto miner, co-founded by Eric Trump, wiping out about half of its value, with trading in the stock halted multiple times today due to intense volatility. Next, we're going to discuss the company's connections to a Chinese firm that's drawing national security concerns. I also want to point out that outside of American Bitcoin, crypto-related stocks as a whole, they are rallying today. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg News reporting that a Chinese manufacturer that sells most of the world's Bitcoin mining machines has been the focus of a months-long federal investigation to assess whether its products pose risks to U.S. national security. The Homeland Department probe was launched to determine whether the machines from Bitmain Tech would be remotely controlled for spying or to sabotage the American power grid. American Bitcoin, which is connected to Eric and Donald Trump Jr., has business dealings with Bitmain. Earlier this year, I asked the American Bitcoin CEO if he agrees that this deal raises national security issues.
I don't believe so. It's very proven that these ASIC chips are programmed just for one purpose, and it's for computations on the SHA-256 algorithm. And Bitmain has been a leading manufacturer. For us, it's really about the merits of the technology, the hardware that we use. We use the most efficient, the most cost-effective to be able to produce Bitcoin at the lowest cost.
Joining us now is David Feith. He left the Trump administration's National Security Council earlier this year and is now a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. Is he correct there, David, that this machinery does not pose a national security risk?
No, unfortunately, there are major concerns across the U.S. government, across the U.S. intelligence community and law enforcement, from the Congress, from the Senate Intelligence Committee, that actually this equipment poses certain major national security vulnerabilities, both with respect to hostile intelligence collection and with respect to the ability of China potentially to use these machines to sabotage the U.S. power grid. And these concerns are long-lasting. They date back some years, and it's really a major national security issue.
Well, it seems like these machines are now ubiquitous. I mean, there are thousands of them in data centers across America. And to that point, David, how does the U.S. address this? What would you suggest?
No, that's a major challenge. You know, the incumbency and the market share of these Chinese providers is a major issue, and that's one that policymakers will have to address. But it's not a justification for allowing the continued growth of such a national security vulnerability. I think really what it more reflects is that this is a relatively new problem. It's a relatively novel area of our economy. It's only a few years old. It hasn't really been on policymakers' radars, either in the executive branch or in the Congress for a long time, but it is now. It has been on the focus of some in law enforcement and in national security circles for some time, and the greater public and official awareness of this is very important to beginning to think through the measures that can be taken to mitigate these risks and to remove what the Senate Intelligence Committee called was an egregious national security threat posed by these kind of machines whose hardware really can't be secured from potential hostile use.
When you were part of the National Security Council, what were the proposals that the National Security Council discussed regarding Bitmain?
Well, earlier this year, the conversations were not quite so mature as to be discussing specific proposals. It was still more like information gathering stage for the new administration and an understanding of where the previous administration and where law enforcement officials had been in looking at this issue over previous months and years. But there are a range of authorities that are held by the Treasury Department in some cases, by the Commerce Department in other cases, that can restrict on national security grounds the ability of untrustworthy hardware like this to operate either in the U.S. market broadly or at least in the U.S. market in places that are proximate to sensitive U.S. government or military facilities, the kind of combination that could allow these crypto mining data centers to potentially attack the power grid next to sensitive U.S. military facilities, which is a particular concern.
David Feith, thank you so much for joining us. We got to have you back soon. Appreciate your time. That is going to do it for Bloomberg Crypto, though. Tune into Bloomberg TV and radio just about an hour from now for a conversation with former SEC Chair Gary Gensler. That is it for Bloomberg Crypto. Join us again next week, same time, same place. This is Bloomberg.